Hello and welcome to another X-Ray.tech video. Today we're going to be talking about the anatomy of automations and the 5 different types of automations that you could have in your business to help you save time. So if you're new to automations, we have a triggering event. We have the first thing that tells the robots, hey, we're going to start moving some data. We're going to start automating. And then there are the action events. So these are individual events that could happen in each different software, and you could have 10, 20, 30, 100 different events sequenced one after another. The way that you could structure the information to be passed from the trigger event into the action event is vital, right? It needs to be intentional, because the action events are only going to be able to use data from either previous steps or that original trigger event. So that trigger is super important because it's how you initiate the automation reliably, consistently, and it's how the automation itself has all the information that it needs in order to perform the actions that you want it to perform. So that's the basics of the anatomy, right? We have triggers and we have actions. Really, there's one trigger per automation and multiple actions per automation. Now, let's get into the 5 different types of automations, right? What are the 5 different types of triggers that we could intentionally decide on to kick off the entirety of the automation? Now, our most popular automation trigger is going to be survey-based. So a survey automation is when the trigger is a survey for you, the person, to complete. Now, the questions on the survey are designed to be able to fill in all the data for all the other action steps that you have in the rest of the automation. For example, if you have an onboarding survey and you ask company name and you ask point of contact email and you ask invoice amount, you then have enough information to go create a Google Drive folder, create a Slack channel, create a customer in QuickBooks, and draft an invoice to them. All of that, those 3 things can happen instantly when you complete the survey. So survey-driven automations are a really easy way of structuring information, collecting information that you need to be identical in multiple places. Otherwise, you're going to be adding in the company name at least 3 times. Once when you create a new Drive folder, once when you create a new Slack channel, and once when you create a new QuickBooks customer. So just a simple survey can save you a lot of time and a lot of repetition. Now, a more advanced implementation of surveys are when you have multiple surveys that are connected to the same set of data. So this might be your sales team filling out a survey of 2 or 3 questions, someone on your operations team filling out a survey of 2 to 3 questions, and someone on your implementation team, right? A survey of 2 to 3 questions. And now those 9 questions are then added to a single data source. And now that all of those questions have been collected by the appropriate person in their various departments, now you have that single record of all of this data. Now we can go, boom, create a kickoff presentation, create a delivery presentation, create an investor update, right? All of these types of things, you need to use a survey to collect a little bit of data from different sources, different heads of your team, different departments, and accumulate that information in your operational database, and in our case, an Airtable record, collect it there, and then you have the ability to, once all that information arrives, that initiates the rest of the automation. And really, this is for automations where there's not a single person who knows all the information that you need. And that's why you break the survey up into multiple surveys from multiple people to complete. And the actual trigger of the automation is the completion of multiple surveys. So all 3 of those need to be complete in order for the automation to activate. Again, a much more advanced implementation and does require some really nifty tools like mini extensions, link in the description below. Definitely use multiple survey triggers as a unique type of implementation when you're trying to collect information from multiple sources. Another type of automations is going to be a software-driven trigger. Now, these are typically, or could be, passive. where an event happens on a particular software, and when that event happens, I want to go do something else. So we have an automation set up between Stripe and QuickBooks. Whenever we get paid on Stripe, that automatically goes to look or find a customer in QuickBooks that doesn't exist, creates a new customer, and then assigns that invoice that they just paid to that customer in QuickBooks. So that's something totally passive. Our finance team loves it. They get to just make sure that it looks right instead of needing to re-enter the information that just happened in Stripe. And that's something that is just passive. It's a part of our infrastructure now. So software-driven automations are going to be much more focused on things that you always want to happen. This shouldn't need a person's attention and shouldn't need the cognitive load of saying, hey, we got paid again, now I need to create a record of this in our accounting software, right? That is going to be true always for your organization. You're always going to want to do that every time you get paid. Software-driven automations are much more focused on building that infrastructure that you want to be consistent, happen quickly, and can only be done in one right way. Next, synchronization automations. So this is really good when you have an enterprise team. If you have multiple departments, you have tens or 20s or hundreds of people using data sets that aren't exactly the same. Synchronization automations are really going to help you get your teams that could be separated on the same page, or at least looking at identical information. Now, a software to do this synchronization, there's a couple out there that are really great. One is Unito and one is coupler.io. Now, both of those are synchronization-focused automation software. So they allow a data set inside of Notion or inside of Airtable or inside of Google Sheets to be synchronized with HubSpot or Google BigQuery or something else. So synchronizing data sets across teams is tough. It's even harder across tools. So there's an entire discipline of automation software dedicated to the synchronization problem. So if you need to synchronize data sets, link in the description, one of those tools is going to be your best bet. Next is scheduled automations. So scheduling is a simple way of consistently getting reminders, pinging different sources to grab data, or to compile a report if you need to on a scheduled basis. Scheduling automations are a way of basing your trigger off of the clock. We have a couple different automations that are schedule based. One of them is for the account managers to remind them, hey, we got to send our weekly email. We have a couple scheduled automations for data and actually compiling presentations based off of the data at a certain time. So, 4 o'clock on a Friday, we go and scrape all of our different data sources to compile a presentation to be able to review on Monday with the whole team. These are different schedule-based automations that are consistent and that perform a certain set of actions after that trigger is hit. So specifically in the scheduled automations though, the trigger is the time. So the first couple of actions need to be actions that actually search and grab data to be able to reuse in the rest of the automation. So for example, with the weekly reminder for the account managers, they are getting a static message every week that says, hey, friendly reminder, don't forget to send your weekly email here. And that is baked into the automation. We actually type that out inside of the automation software. And in this case, it's Zapier. So for the other example that I shared about compiling data for a report, that first action in the automation is go to Airtable and find and scrape all of the data in that Airtable base. Now, this is an Integromat automation that goes into Airtable, grabs all of these data sources, and then compiles a presentation in Google Sheets based off of that data source that was just scraped. And this is, the last Friday of every week. That is an automation that happens. But that first action step needs to be something that can go and grab data. So that's the one caveat with scheduled automations, is that the first action step really is going to need to either grab certain data sets, or you're going to need to hard code whatever you want to do in there. Lastly here, you can use any combination of these different automation styles. Using the anatomy that we just talked about of an automation, right? These different triggering styles you can use in any combination thereof. And a lot of times when you're architecting a bigger process, you're gonna want to chunk these different aspects of this process out so that you can say, all right, this will be done by this team in this department, or this will be done by this person in this department. And you can start to piece together all of the data points that you need to do this big thing, either compile a big report or send all of this information or just compose the information for later use, really. So I hope this video has been helpful. There are a ton of different ways that you can use these different automation styles, and I hope this just helped you understand how automation works functionally. It's just a lot easier to start building some of these automations when you really understand the different methods that you have to work with, when you're figuring out how do I consistently create that trigger and get all of the data that I need inside of those action steps. As always, links and resources are in the description down below, and don't forget, keep the flow.